WDKN and W268B in Dickson, Tennessee, serving Dickson County.
Turn it up.
Streaming online at WDKN.com.
I love listening to it over and over. I love it.
This is 101.5 The One and WDKN, Dixon's country music home.
Where can you get information on the latest news and events in Dickson County? Right here on Know Your County on WDKN 1260 AM and 101.5 The One FM. Know Your County keeps you informed about events that matter to you. Now, here is your host for today's Know Your County.
All right. You're listening to Know Your County here on WDKN. And we are live this Saturday morning, May the 21st, here in downtown Dickson. It's turned into a real beautiful morning out there. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping. And last night, over at Dickson County High School Stadium, there was a graduation that took place. And it was a great ceremony. The night before, on Thursday night, Creekwood graduated. And so the past couple of nights have been a real monumental moment for a lot of these young people all across our county. These young 18-year-olds are, as Coach Holly said last night, you've been told a lie if you've been told that high school was the best moments of your life and it's all downhill from here. It's not that way at all, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But it's actually the beginning of their the rest of their lives, and just the first step in a long rest of their lives where hopefully they're going to do all these amazing things. But last night, kind of want to recap real quick at the beginning of the show here, the graduation last night. So we've got a theme for the shows this morning. A couple of weeks ago, I tried to line up some guests, and for some reason, May 21st was a little tough, trying to get people to come in here and talk this morning, because a lot of people were going to graduations. People had their grandchildren were graduating from maybe either a college or maybe a high school that's maybe not right here in Dickson, because people kind of move away sometimes. And so I kind of thought, what would be fun to do? Let's do something a little different. Let's just talk about graduation all Saturday morning. And when I thought about who I could have come in here and sort of be my co-host, Mr. Edward England Jr. came to mind first and foremost, and so I sent him a message, and he said he'd love to do it. So Edward was here with me from 7 to 7:30 on the Old Timer Show, talking all about the old days of graduation, 1973. You were part of the very first class that graduated from Dickson County High School, and that year was a little bit different because it was wet and it had to be held in the gym, but I appreciate you kind of taking us back to 1973 and telling us a little bit about that. Last night was the 50th class to graduate. You were part of the first. I was part of the 30th, and last night was the 50th. And it was a great ceremony. It started right at 7 o'clock sharp. The skies were very clear. I looked up because, a lot of times we do have rain on graduation night, and I looked up, and it was as clear as the sky could possibly be. There wasn't even a cloud in the sky, so I knew it was going to be a good night. It was a little warm for those of us who had on, jacket and tie and things like that. It was a little bit warm, but for the most part, the weather cooperated with us. Had a great ceremony. They set up on the football field right there in Dickson County Stadium. They had chairs for the students, for the graduates, right there on the field. They had a podium for the speakers, and both sides of the stadium, the home side and the visitor side, was almost completely full. I think on the visitor side, at the very end, it was a little sparse on maybe a fourth of the bleachers there, but for the most part, that stadium was packed. And it was the first time in a couple of years that the stadium was allowed to be packed like that due to COVID regulations and a lot of the different things that happened last year, and especially the year before last. There weren't as many people that got to come out. So as I was talking to some of the other teachers, we looked out at the crowd and we remarked that, it's good to see the stadium full of people. It's good to have things sort of back to normal, I guess you could say, from the way that they've been the past few years. But it felt like a normal graduation last night. There were 2 buses. So we've got these nice new buses that have been purchased, I believe, by the Central Office Board of Education for the high school, for Dickson County High School, and as well as for Creekwood. And they're very colorful. They've been painted with the logo, so they're orange and blue, and they lined those buses up right behind the podium. So the backdrop was sort of, the campus, but it was also these 2 buses that were very colorful. And then you had Director of Schools, Dr. Danny Weeks. You had all the principals from the Dickson County High School, from Coach Holly to Ms. Perez, Coach Williams, Mr. Pierce, and then as well Miss Webster. They were all there in their orange blazers, which I love, by the way. Those are so cool. They have these orange jackets that they wear with the Dickson County, the Intercross D&C logo on the chest, and they just look so good. And they led the graduates in last night to the stadium. Of course, the Dickson County graduates always wear blue gowns for the guys and white for the girls. I guess it's been like that since 1973. Yes, is that correct? And it was like that again last night. They looked very good in their attire, their graduation attire. They looked very good, and I just had a really good time being there. Graduation, like I said, started at 7 o'clock. Coach Holly addressed everybody. There was a national anthem. JROTC, of course, came out, and they did their thing, raised the colors. There was, of course, the national anthem, and then things got started. Class president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So the class officers were all there, and they were all featured. And just real quickly, I'll mention their names since we've got a few extra minutes this morning. But class president, senior class of 2022 is Caroline Choate, vice president Sophie Perigin, secretary Jesus Rodriguez, and treasurer Dev Patel. And so they were all, there representing their class very well. Class president came out and gave a speech, and then the faculty award winners. So you got your gold medalist, silver medalist, and bronze medalist were also there. And I'll just take just a second here to mention kind of what that is. Maybe every high school doesn't do this, but we do at Dickson County High School. The faculty gets together and gives out 3 awards: gold medalist, silver, and bronze. And so while the class officers, your president, your vice president, and so on, are voted on by students, the faculty awards are voted on by the faculty, and it's actually a really interesting process, and I won't, try to dwell on it too long, but I will mention real quick that I really like that process. This year was the first year that I got to be part of it, but all the teachers get together, and they nominate different students who they think have been exceptional students, and a lot get nominated. 20, maybe 30 different students get nominated, maybe even more than that. I can't remember. It was a pretty long list, but teachers make their nominations. And then all the teachers kind of sit around, and we put a picture of this particular student up on the board, and we kind of have a little bit of a debate. And nothing bad is said about a student, but just good things are said about different students. And it's the opportunity for students to tell those little stories, maybe a little moment that happened that maybe everybody didn't know about. And I just loved that part of it. And eventually, after, believe it or not, it goes a couple of hours. But we sit around and we talk about these students and the great things that they've done. And after some discussion, we decide on a bronze, silver, and gold medalist. And that's kind of how we get those awards, in case anybody's wondering. I've had a few people ask me, how do they decide on that? Well, that's kind of how we decide that. And last night there were 3 students who were given those medals. The gold medalist was Levi Sutherland, silver medalist was Sophie Perigin, and then the bronze medalist was Grayson Bobian. And they had great speeches, all 3 of them. It was great to give them a chance to get up there and talk. I really like listening to their speeches because they have a unique perspective on life and a unique perspective on education, and just hearing their perspective is a lot of fun. So that was fun last night. And of course, went through, and valedictorian, salutatorian also spoke. The valedictorian was also a medalist, and that was Grayson Bobian. And I just loved his speech. His speech was really cool. He started off by, kind of talking about all the typical things that you would expect to hear in a graduation speech. But then he said a few other things that it really kind of touched me. He said, people talk about all the good grades you get and all these things, but they don't mention the people that support you. And he mentioned how his grandparents had been at all of his ball games, and how his mom had read to him when he was young, and all these people that supported him. But he didn't just give you the cliche thing. He really took you through and made you understand kind of where he came from. Great speech. And then the others gave great speeches as well. Levi Sutherland, you can tell that he's a really intelligent young man with the way that he speaks and the way that he wrote his speech. And Just all of them did a great job. I hate to mention them by name because I'll leave somebody out, but they all did a really good job last night. I really enjoyed the ceremony. It was a lot of fun. And now they're going to leave here and they're going to go out into the world. We want to talk about that. But let's go ahead and take our first break and get that out of the way. We'll come back. I've got Mr. Edward England Jr., who's agreed to come back and talk with me a little bit more about graduation. We'll be right back. You're listening to Know Your County right here on WDKN.
Business internet is a must. Paying bills, sending emails, updating your website, running social media campaigns, even your phone and credit card machine need reliable internet. But your options are limited, and every provider has its drawbacks. That's why RFC Broadband for Business is here. A truly local business offering wireless high-speed internet options for your business. Affordable prices, no wires, no contracts, no data caps. RFC Broadband for Business, 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com. Simple billing, rural coverage, and again, no contracts or data caps. It's all designed with you in mind. See the difference a local company makes. RFC Broadband for Business, 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com. Currently not available in all areas. Call for availability.
In times of joy, in moments of grief, broadcasters come through, even when all else fails. Today, with more ways than ever to experience the moments that transform our lives, Americans still choose broadcast radio and television more than all other media combined. We are the local broadcasters of radio and television, reaching more people, touching more lives. Brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
And we're back here on Know Your County, here on WDKN. We're live from downtown Dickson this morning. It's a beautiful morning, the morning after graduation at Dickson County High School last night. And in the first segment of the program, I was just kind of going over some of the different things that happened last night, mentioning some of the different students. But now, Edward, they're moving on. They're no longer students at the high school anymore. Now they're moving on to do new things. And things have really changed a lot in the past 50 years. We were talking between the two shows a little bit about how things have changed just with gas prices. I mean, you go to the pump here. I'm going to have to go get some gas after we leave here. I'm about on empty, but it's high. Over $4 a gallon right now. Do you remember how cheap it was back in 1973?
A whopping 28 cents a gallon.
Wow.
And I drove a 57 Chevrolet with a 283 motor. I drove it from White Bluff to Dickson and back every day. My father gave me, I helped my father build 2 houses the summer of '72. And my pay was the family jalopy, which was the 57 Chevy, because Dad turned around and bought my mother a brand new car. And he gave me $5 a week for gas to get to school and back. Well, on $5 a week for gas at 28 cents, I drove to DCHS every day and had gas on the weekend left over. Can't do that now.
Well, I feel sorry for these young guys who try to go out and get a job just so that they can pay for gas to get back and forth to school, because they'll probably have to work a full-time job just to be able to get back and forth.
It's awful. It's awful. And talking about where life's going to take me now, I have said before, I'm very concerned about what they're facing in today's economy versus what we did. Now, there were only maybe 2 or 3 decent employers in Dickson at the time. Let's see, there's Tensco, Red Cap, and Henry I. Siegel, I believe were the 2 main employers. So I commuted to Nashville for 26 years. I drove an old vehicle that I maintained well, because they're only going to depreciate so much. If I'm going to rack up the miles on a vehicle, I'm going to do it on an old one that's not going to hurt the price of it. I know the morning after graduation, we graduated on Sunday, May 27, 1973. And on Monday morning, I was at work. I entered a 3-year apprenticeship program for carpentry. We're building concrete forms. We did some rebar, for reinforcing concrete. I started well, today I think it's like maybe a Cross Point Church or something at the corner of Cowan and Jefferson Street in Nashville. Then I moved on. When that job was finished, I moved on to the brand new Hyatt Regency Hotel. Started on the foundation. We ended up they were actually renting out rooms while we were installing furniture in the rooms. And today that is the Sheraton downtown, Nashville. But it originated as a Hyatt Regency. I went from there to the Bell South building in Brentwood. We built it. Later on, it became something else. I can't remember the name of it, but what it is now. Roughly 1976, we were entering the mid-70s recession. There was very little construction, so you had to morph with the times. You have to roll with it. So I went to work for a furniture company in Nashville. This is my first experience in supply chain, warehousing, distribution. And I liked that because I was pretty much a natural with numbers and organization. I worked for them for about 3 years. I got married, had my first child while I was there. And then I went back to construction because construction picked up. I could make more money there. Then it kind of went into a lull again. I wanted a job where I would be, if I got to work, I would be working. I was no longer at the mercy of the weather or anything like that. So I wanted to make sure I had a full-time job and benefits. And that's the direction I went. So I went into supply chain logistics, warehouse management, warehouse operations, and worked for my next 33 years was in supply chain logistics. It was a very good career, very good. It was really good to my family and me.
I guess when you graduate, you have no idea where life's going to take you.
Exactly.
And all these twists and turns, and eventually brings you to where you are. But it's just like you got the whole world in front of you, and you just hope that you can do something good and be there for everybody. But these guys, they got a whole life in front of them. What advice would you give them as far as anybody who's listening who maybe graduated last night or maybe graduated recently who is about to hit the world?
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't have just one plan. Have 4 or 5 backup plans. In my life since graduation, I've basically had to reinvent my career 3 times. I went from construction to supply chain logistics. A lot of people don't know this, but in 2008 I crushed 2 vertebrae in my neck. I had some severe nerve damage, so I had to actually go on disability. But that don't mean stay home and don't do anything. Then I went into security work because I had so much experience with logistics. Then security was the next natural step. I was with loss prevention. I worked with service merchandise for 19 years. A lot of people will remember that company. It was a great company, the best company I've ever worked for. But then they became a victim of the post 9/11 event, tragedy. And so that company dissolved. But before they dissolved, I already saw some issues with the future of the company, so I left the company. We started a new one here in Dickson. And I was with that company for 10 years. So a total of 33 years in warehouse management systems and inventory control and that sort of thing. First plan, as the old saying goes, if at first you don't succeed, you're about average. It's not try again. It's you're about average. So be alert. Make good choices. Those who are going to college, great, Remember to have a major and a minor, where you can and look at the job market. No, what's going to happen when I graduate with an associate's in 2 years or a bachelor's in 4 years? Is there going to be a market for that job? And I see where a lot of times people put their faith into that future. And then, but by the time they get there, jobs have dried up. There's not as much demand for them. Technology rolls. I mean, you buy a brand new computer today, it's obsolete tomorrow.
That's true.
Technology, I can't tell you how much technology has changed. Okay, I'm 67 years old now. If you take the year I was born and subtract 67 years, the same age, you're looking at 1880 something.
It's true.
And look how much technology has changed. My grandparents went from horse and buggy days to seeing a man land on the moon and come back.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Where we've come as a society.
And just in the last 30 years, we just started having the bricks that everybody called it, the telephone. It looks like whenever you pull it out, you're calling in for an airstrike or something. But now that will fit in your pocket with all the known information in the world in your pocket.
It's true.
But we've talked about that before. But that's my advice to the young people today. Have a backup plan. There's a lot of competition out there, and it doesn't matter that you get your degree. It's where you place in your class a lot of times. Because they may, the employers want the best and the best and the best. Life can throw some really serious punches at you, but roll with it, go with it, enjoy your life, but make good decisions.
I think that's some good advice right there.
Think about trade school also. Trade school, so many young people I know went to trade school, and by the time they're 30 years old, they own their own companies, and they're already worth $1 million.
And I tell you who, and we sort of alluded to this in the break. We need to take our last break here in just a second, but I do want to mention you and I between shows we're talking about. And if you have just a second, let's talk about this real quick. But you tell me back in the days when you went to school in White Bluff that there was a group that made houses, and
we built houses.
What could we, what do we need more right now of? And one of the things is houses. I mean, there's sort of a housing crisis. You mentioned how much you paid for a house. Tell the people on here, they won't believe this number, because nowadays houses cost, you probably can't even find a house less than $200,000 nowadays. But how much you pay for that first house?
I was 19 years old. I bought my first house, $17,500 in Edgefield, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Edgefield out on Sylvia Road. 3-bedroom brick for $17,500.
Wow.
And today that same house is still there, and it would probably go for $250,000.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible.
And it's amazing what these guys learned. You were telling me that the shop class would go out and actually build a house every year, and this would be a way for guys to learn different skills that they could go on. And you said some of those guys that learned how to build houses in school back then went on to careers where they were building and made lots of money, and maybe still out there building houses today.
And I know of at least 2 of them who are still very active, even though they're older than I am. And one of them right now has, I think, maybe 5 or 6 houses going right now with this cruise. But they went into the actual construction side of it, or the plumbing, or the electrical, or the HVAC, heating and air. And a lot of these guys are multimillionaires now. And they don't have the student debts. We've talked about the student debt situation, and how people, how it seems like they just keep wanting you to rack up more debt and more debt and more debt. And so I really feel bad for the guys who got maybe some bad advice, bad guidance, and racked up unnecessary debt.
Well, there's a lot of different options you have, especially nowadays when you get out of high school. College is one route, trade school is another. Just going to work is also something I think is becoming more popular again. If you pick a particular trade, you can end up making a lot of money.
And it depends on work ethics and work.
Absolutely.
And how much you want to get it.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and take our last break here. We'll come back and wrap things up. I'm here on the Know Your County with Mr. Edward England Jr. We'll take our last break. We'll be right back here on WDKN.
Business internet is a must. Paying bills, sending emails, updating your website, running social media campaigns, even your phone and credit card machine need reliable internet. But your options are limited, and every provider has its drawbacks. That's why RFC Broadband for Business is here. A truly local business offering wireless high-speed internet options for your business. Affordable prices, no wires, no contracts, no data caps. RFC Broadband for Business, 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com. Simple billing, rural coverage, and again, no contracts or data caps. It's all designed with you in mind. See the difference a local company makes. RFC Broadband for Business, 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com. Currently not available in all areas. Call for availability.
In times of joy, in moments of grief, broadcasters come through, even when all else fails. Today, with more ways than ever to experience the moments that transform our lives, Americans still choose broadcast radio and television more than all other media combined. We are the local broadcasters of radio and television, reaching more people, touching more lives. Brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
And we're back here on Know Your County, right here on WDKN. And this morning we've been talking all about graduation. In the first episode, from 7 to 7:30 of the Old Timer Show, we kind of covered the old days with 1973, the first Dickson County High School graduation, kind of comparing that to when I graduated in 2002 and then the graduation that we had last night. And then luckily, Mr. Edward England Jr. wanted to come back here with me for Know Your County, and we've been talking more about graduation. At the beginning of the program, I kind of gave everybody a rundown of what happened last night, but I left something out that I wanted to mention. We got to talking about college, and it reminded me there were two girls last night who really impressed me. They were, and I don't have their names right in front of me, but they were two girls who really impressed me because they not only got their high school diploma last night, but they also got their college associate's degree last night, and I was so impressed by that. These two young ladies, and one of them is Officer Blackwell's daughter, Bella Blackwell, and I can't think of the other girl's name. I didn't write it down. I'm not seeing it on the program here, but these two young ladies graduated not just high school but college, and I was just fascinated with that. So they got these dual enrollment programs where you can take a class at DCHS that gives you high school credit, but you can also do college credit at the same time. Now, even when I was going to school, you could do that, and I think I took one class, maybe an English class, college English class in high school from Doc Jones. But now they have the opportunity to not just take one class, but to actually get 2 years of college out of the way. I was just fascinated by that, and we've actually got an Austin Peay State University representative that comes down here named Stephanie Bilderback, who I've met several times. I actually probably need to get her on the show sometimes to talk about the different things she does, because she owns a boutique here downtown. She works with the kids, helping them get college credit while they're in high school. It's really a cool thing, but I couldn't end the show without giving them a shout out of the amazing thing that they did, and I hope more students, choose to do that. But like we mentioned before the show, you don't necessarily have to go to college. You can go to trade school. We talked about some guys who learned skills, who went on to become builders. There's a lot of different routes you can go, and I hope that they choose something that will help the community. I know that you ended up doing something with the Red Cross that's really helped not only this community, but communities all across the United States. Well, let's talk about that real quick before we have to head out here.
Well, I mentioned a minute ago, my career actually ended when I had my neck injury. Had to have my neck fused. And what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I was 54 years old. I was ready to, I still had more. I wasn't finished yet. I still had to support family. And by that time, my grandchildren are already starting to come along. And so a very close friend of mine, Libby Gill from White Bluff, was on the disaster team here in Dickson County. She and Paige Gordon were Red Cross volunteers, and so her enthusiasm drew me in. And I wanted to feel like I was still contributing in some way. So I became a volunteer for the American Red Cross. Now I'm the government liaison between the Red Cross and everything emergency services in Dickson County. I love what I do. Well, we all love what we do, and we go out to the house fires when somebody has a fire. And of course, COVID stopped a lot of things for about 2 years. So we're just now getting where we can actually go out again. They're allowing us to go out, but they kept us from it. So we were doing everything virtually, doing everything online by phones, video chat. I went to Hurricane Michael. That was Cat 5. And I've been to, I don't know how many tornadoes. I've been to, we coordinate feeding for the recoveries and searches down at the river, or when they have a missing person. We coordinate for the feeding for the teams and the family members who may be there, to be there to listen to their stories and try to console them. When someone gets displaced due to, say, a house fire, we go out and take care of them, make sure they got their basic necessities, make sure they got a place to go. And then afterwards we check back with them and try to see their progress. Volunteer work, to me, goes back to whenever my parents did. My father was a contractor. He would go out, and somebody had a house fire or just needed repairs. He would go out. He would get donated materials many times, and then he would do the work for free. My mother, she would do things such that, like cooking for people who were sick or couldn't get out, or go help them with her house. And of course, both parents are gone now. But I sort of got my volunteer spirit from them also. And that's another thing about today's society. There are so many different ways you can contribute, especially with the recent graduates. They can contribute in giving back to other people, because so many of us are able to do something that others cannot do. We can provide something for others. There's a Bible scripture that says that for those who are able to work so they can give to others who can't. And, give to the less fortunate. And life has been very blessed for me. I've loved everything that we've gone through. Some of it's been hard, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so if anybody would like to become a volunteer for their community, it doesn't have to be just the Red Cross. There's just so many other opportunities. I know that the Dickson County Help Center they need people to come in and help sometimes. Always remember that your life is not about you. It's about, we are all put here to help each other. And I believe that we need to give back. There are programs in colleges where it will actually help you on your credits and maybe on your college debts to do some volunteer hours. Think about it, because there are so many different ways of giving back.
Absolutely. That's some great advice. I appreciate you coming in this morning and not only taking us back to 1973, but also giving some good advice to the graduates who, as they mentioned last night, today is the first day of the rest of their lives.
Exactly.
And so they're probably not even awake yet, but as those graduates begin to wake up, they will be getting started on the rest of their life today.
That's okay. We got one thing in common. I'm barely awake too.
Well, thank you for getting up with me early this morning and coming down to the show. It's been a little bit of a different kind of show today, with a little bit of a theme, and I thought it went pretty well, and I appreciate you doing it.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you for coming. And I think it's when we have these important events in the county, it's good to kind of take a second to sort of analyze that, look back, and sort of comment on something big that happens. And so just congratulations to all the graduates out at Creekwood High School. Congratulations to the graduates at Dickson County High School.
And I do want to give one shout out to my other grandson, who will be my last one to graduate in 2 years, Dylan England. He is with JROTC at DCHS. Of course, his older brother, Andrew, is the one that graduated from Creekwood last night.
And I think Dylan's class of 2024.
I believe that's right.
I think I had him in class a couple years ago, but I get them mixed up, right?
He
But
actually gave you high compliments, too, on your teaching.
I appreciate that. He was a good kid. He was a good guy to have in class, and definitely interested in history. I noticed that.
Oh, he is.
From the very beginning. So, well, thank you for coming in today. Thank you to everybody who's listening. Coach Profit, Coach Larry Profit, DMS head football coach, as always, is listening to us this morning. He just sent me a text. Coach, thanks for listening to us. I got a chance to hang out with him a little bit at the graduation last night. We were watching some of our former students graduate, and that's always fun. So thanks for listening, Coach. Thanks for everybody else who gets up every Saturday morning and listens with us. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned to WDKN. We got some good music coming up next. We'll be back here next week. I'll be back with another guest on the Old Timers program at 7 next Saturday, and then again at 8 o'clock with Know Your County. Hope everybody in Dickson County has a great weekend. And again, congratulations to all the graduates.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for